Relations between Ukraine and the United States have deteriorated dramatically since the recent meeting between Trump and Zelensky, which saw the two leaders spark a dispute. As a result, the agreement on rare earth metals was scrapped. However, its signing is now being discussed again. Relations remain tense, with Trump accusing Zelensky of not wanting peace and cutting off aid to Ukraine. The tense relationship between Zelensky and Trump dates back to Trump's first term in office. In 2019, the United States began a process that later became known as Ukraine-gate. Its essence was that Trump put pressure on Zelensky to launch an investigation against Biden's son on suspicion of corruption. There were good reasons for this. Zelensky distanced himself from the conflict and the escalating U.S. election race, saying that he wanted to maintain good relations with the two parties in the United States. After this conversation and Zelensky's reaction, it became known that Trump had frozen $391 million in military aid. The latter was an important signal for the start of the investigation and impeachment of Trump. The aid freeze was interpreted as an abuse of power and pressure on third countries. The impeachment of Trump was unsuccessful, largely due to the fact that the Senate was in favor of the Republicans, and they stopped the impeachment process. Despite the fact that Trump was not removed, this conflict played a decisive role in the next election, in which Trump failed to win and the Democrat Biden came to power. Trump himself still believes that the election was stolen from him, and in many ways the loss was directly related to Zelensky. It is likely that if an investigation against Biden's son were to begin, it would lead to his failure. Therefore, the current conflict may have long-standing roots that stretch back to 2019. Trump's personal relationship with Zelensky has always been quite tense and negative. Trump's return to the White House has again raised the question of Trump-Zelensky cooperation. Only now the situation for Ukraine has become many times worse. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, and the conflict is still ongoing, while Ukraine's dependence on American support is enormous, if not vital. There was tension between Zelensky and Trump from the beginning when his administration took over the White House, but it was not critical. At the same time, Zelensky had offered the United States his victory plan even before Trump won the election, one of the points of which was a plan for Ukrainian rare earth metals, and the fact that the United States could develop them in Ukraine on special terms. With the arrival of Trump, he became extremely interested in this point, and he began to promote it. It is unclear whether the Ukrainian authorities were counting on such a reaction, but Trump directly began to insist that Ukraine transfer these resources to the United States for use. Negotiations began on a possible agreement on this issue, which began to lead to conflicts. The first one started after the arrival of the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury to Ukraine. According to various sources, there was a conflict, after which Trump intensified his harsh criticism of Zelensky, calling him a dictator and saying that he had a 4% approval rating. However, the first conflict was resolved quite quickly. A few days later, it became known that Zelensky was personally traveling to the United States to sign the agreement, and Trump's rhetoric changed 180 degrees. He even pretended to forget what he had said about the dictatorship. Zelensky's own visit to the United States to meet with Trump again raised the degree of conflict and led to a near break with the United States. After the meeting, it was announced that aid and intelligence sharing would be suspended. The situation is likely to stabilize. The treaty on rare earth metals itself was not signed at the time. To a large extent, Trump's anger was caused by Zelensky's refusal to agree to the deal. This is the most important point of conflict now, along with Trump's previous insults. Rare earth metals began to play a crucial role in the 20th century, in the era of electronics, for which these resources are massively used. They also play a key role in the armed forces. The global problem for the Americans is that Beijing controls 60% of the world's production and 90% of the world's processing of rare earth metals, and has a strategic advantage in this area. Trump, rightly considering China to be his main enemy and competitor, wants to gain his own advantage in this area and get rid of Chinese dependence. Obviously, in a global confrontation, this carries significant risks, both economic and military, where rare earth metals play a crucial role. So why is there such a problem with rare earth metals, and why doesn't the United States mine them? The main problem is that most of them are indeed located in China, more than 40 million tons compared to 2 million tons in the United States. However, there are deposits not only in the United States but also in the territory of our allies. The second problem is the complexity of mining and environmental aspects. As for the complexity of mining, it means large investments that may not pay off in the end due to changes in prices for various rare earth metals. For this reason, in most cases, such mining is carried out by the state, which is ready to take such risks. The environmental problems in this process are also serious. Developed countries cannot afford such mining due to existing restrictions and the harmfulness of the technological process, unlike China, where this is neglected and the regions where rare earth metals are mined are highly polluted. It is worth noting that Ukraine alone cannot really solve the problem of the United States in terms of rare earth metals, as there are not many reserves, and most of them are in the occupied territories. But it is part of Trump's strategy to reduce China's influence. Trump also believes that Zelensky does not want to end the war. A quick end to the war was one of Trump's central promises for U.S. foreign policy. Trump's representatives have already held several talks with Russia and Ukraine, and Trump himself has said that it is much easier to negotiate with Russia than with the Ukrainian side. The point of disagreement in this matter is the issue of security guarantees for Ukraine. Over the past few months, Zelensky has been trying to convince his Western counterparts that such guarantees are necessary for a stable and lasting peace. On the one hand, this is understandable. For example, the project of peacekeepers in Ukraine is being actively discussed. On the other hand, Trump wants to end the war as soon as possible and is ready to do so even without security guarantees. Recently, Trump's representatives said that guarantees could be provided after the war is over and that now it is necessary to at least cease fire. Trump's acceleration on this issue is also linked to the United States' global strategy of pulling Russia away from China. Trump is ready to reintegrate Russia into Western institutions to cut it off from its main enemy and competitor. Zelensky and Trump's spat in front of the cameras was largely about that. Zelensky tried to prove to Trump that guarantees were necessary, and this led to the conflict. Although Zelensky's visit was related exclusively to the signing of the rare earth metals agreement, and the last reason is the close ties of the Ukrainian establishment to the Democrats, Trump's opponents. The Ukrainian establishment under Poroshenko has always gravitated towards the Democrats and was more loyal to this party. Zelensky, on the other hand, tried to balance, but with the outbreak of war, he was also fully involved in the Democratic environment, forgetting that there is another powerful party in the United States and that it could seize the initiative in the next election. And so it happened. Zelensky himself supported the Democrats to one degree or another, almost to the last. This is what Divins reminded him of during the last dispute, saying that Zelensky played along with the Democrats and came to a military plant in Pennsylvania in the midst of the election race. At the time, Republicans called it election interference. In general, his closeness to Biden has played a cruel joke on Zelensky, and he is closely associated with the Democratic Party, which continues to bring negative press. The last election in the United States brought Republicans to power absolutely everywhere. The president is a Republican, and the two houses of Congress are also with them. Trump himself has repeatedly said that elections in Ukraine need to be held, hoping to replace him with a more loyal candidate. To summarize, the relationship between Trump and Zelensky was tense back in 2019. Upon his return to the White House, the deal on rare earth metals and the format for ending the war became points of disagreement, leading to an open confrontation. Instead, Zelensky is also remembered for his close ties to the Democrats. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel to not miss new videos.
I never answer to no, man, I still go.